Hello, Georgie. Welcome. It's such a pleasure that we managed to organize this conversation. Obviously, given the massive time gap between me and you. Welcome to Rushana's Mindset Lab, and I'm so happy that you're here.
Thank you for having me here. I'm super excited. Thank you.
Excellent, Georgie. So I'd like to start by asking you to share your business journey. So how did you arrive at the idea of starting a business?
I think the idea has kind of been with me ever since I was very young. But the opportunity hadn't really presented itself. It was the time had never been right. And so when I started thinking about this a business, I was actually living in Australia, and I was doing a job that didn't really fulfill me. I was also operating in an environment that wasn't quite the right environment for me.
Mm.
Um, and so it started there, but truly it started with the fact that my mental health was really struggling at that time in my life. And so I had experienced burnout. I went through cycles of burnout, which eventually resulted in depression. And depression kind of got worse as I continued really to push myself to ignore those symptoms of mental struggle. Then I asked for help. I tried counseling and it didn't quite work for me. So the result was that the depression became suicidal depression. And it's just one of those moments in life, I guess, when you have to make a decision because things need to change. They either go one way or the other. And so something within me said, you know what, you're going to make that decision after 90 days. And I'm going to create a program for you to follow in these 90 days. And so I did. This program was had a meditation every day,
Mm.
a physical exercise component. I was doing this but I called them back then creativity exercises, but now I, in hindsight, realized they had a cognitive behavioral component to them,
Mm.
and and I had to put a post-it on my fridge every day, just a tick that I've done these things. And as the weeks passed, I realized incredible changes, first in the way I perceived the reality. And then I noticed changes in my environment as well. And so I noticed, for example, how I was contributing to creating unnecessary stress in my life, how I had certain, what they're called in cognitive behavioral therapy, they're called cognitive distortions, right? So ways in which we misinterpret the world that we're not aware of, right? All of us actually have them as humans. But when someone is suffering from anxiety and depression, they have a higher frequency. And so for that individual, it really feels like that's the world the way it is. You don't even question it. So as I go through this process, I became aware of that and I started to get more clarity, more focus. And and needless to say, at the end of the 90 days, I was a completely different person. And that was really I guess the first step into what was going to become one of the pivotal aspects of my business. It's called the well-being protocol. So I took the learnings from there and I refined it into a program that's shorter, that's really straight to the point, that is specific for someone who's experiencing burnout, anxiety, and depression in the workplace. um, and doesn't it's not necessarily a counseling program, it's not therapy. It is for an everyday person that needs really a boost. And so I refined that program. I started to work with people and I saw that it is impactful for them. I also saw that many people were suffering from burnout and anxiety symptoms, but they weren't talking about it, right? Because the at that time, burnout was not as discussed as it is now.
Mm.
This is like many years ago. I mean, we should consider the fact that it was really only in 2019 that the World Health Organization recognized burnout as an occupational hazard
Mm.
resulting from chronic workplace stress unsuccessfully managed. So that was 2019. That's pretty recent, right?
Mhm.
But yes, back then it wasn't as discussed. In fact, I didn't even know that some of the symptoms that I was experiencing were burnout. I just thought that something wrong with me, right? And so I noticed this. I had the program, and then I thought, okay, I'm going to quit this job. I'm going to leave Australia. The job was linked to permanent residency, so I was like, okay, no, just I feel like I need to need. And I had this instinct that I had to come to New Zealand. And so I thought, I'm going to come to New Zealand. I'm going to do research on the well-being protocol because I want to see, to get data, scientific data that it actually works.
Mm.
And so that's what I did. I came to New Zealand at the University of Auckland. I had the opportunity to work with some amazing people, and we did this intervention. We did intervention studies, and so the results were, um, up to 58% reduction in stress. And by the way, this is during the 2020 COVID outbreak, because we set up the studies, everything was good to go. COVID came, woo, everything, all of the participants disappeared. So we had to recruit because we were working with schools. And so when you work with schools, you have a relationship with the principal. And so there's a whole protocol that you have to follow. When COVID came, they were so overwhelmed by the fact that we're going into quarantine, we have to switch to online teaching, and we have only 2 weeks to do so. So
Mm.
no one replied to us anymore. So we recruited teachers from Facebook, and we just did the study with teachers all over New Zealand, and we worked online. So the results we got after that was up to 58% reduction in stress, up to 60% reduction in burnout, and up to 103 improvement in mental well-being. So it was pretty amazing, and it was incredible to work with people as they were going, as we were all going through this situation that was new to us all. um, so the business came out of that, right? And now what I do is really, I kind of follow that passion about having a workplace that is psychologically healthy and safe for people. And it is really, um, good to see that COVID-19 brought conversations of mental health and well being to the fore, because
Mm.
I think that's very important. Having operated in a corporate culture that was rather toxic, I can tell you that it leaves a mark. And um, and it's just not only me. The research has come out recently, and it shows that this year and in the upcoming years, 1 in 2 people in the workplace will have either anxiety or depression. So this is a pretty significant statistic. So we need to take that into account. And so my business now, yes, the well-being protocol is part of it. So I work with businesses supporting them to offer this training to their employees. But more than that, my approach is a holistic approach, because just training someone to be able um, to be able to rest their brain, to be able to reduce their cognitive load, to be able to change the way their body responds to stress is very powerful. But it is not enough. If you have a work design that is unmanageable for someone, right? If you have a toxic culture, that is not going to work. So the way I work with companies is in a 3-step process. It's called work health design. So I help them identify psychosocial hazards in their company. So a psychosocial hazard is, I'll give you some examples. For example, workload, resources, the availability of resources, if there is bullying or incivility, if someone perceives having enough autonomy. So these are just some of the aspects of having a good work design. So we assess that. We also conduct for them focus groups, and so we tell them basically, this is what's happening in your organization. This is what our recommendations. And then of course there's the training, the well-being protocol, and working with leaders, because that's very, very important. Because research has shown that when it comes to burnout, for example, um, the relationship with a manager can either be an incredibly protective factor or a pathway straight into burnout.
Mm.
So I guess that's the story of the business, and it evolved in real time with the pandemic and with the challenges that companies are facing now. We're talking now, the biggest challenge is what is called the Great Resignation, or people have come up with different names for it, but the reality is there is a talent shortage for um, in quite a few sectors. And so companies are becoming aware that one of the important factors that makes people stay has to do with company culture, has to do with psychosocial health and safety.
Wow, this is
Mm.
such an interesting story. Thank you very much for sharing. And I'd like to pick up on a few things. So
Yes.
first of all, it's very personal to you and it's very
Mm.
meaningful, not just to you, to companies and people, individuals in companies, right? And
Mm.
I really like the fact that it's research based, that you went into
Mm.
academia and collected the data and tested some of the instruments. And I think that's really valuable, that you don't just say, well, this stuff is amazing. You have the real data to support it.
Yeah.
This is fantastic. And I really liked that you said, I mean, it was a challenge, I'm sure, the fact that you recruited so many
Mm.
participants, and then COVID came. How did you come out of that?
The
Having
stress, you
done it
mean?
exactly. So having done a PhD myself, I know what it's like when you are
Yeah,
this close to that data being collected, and then all of a sudden it all
it
goes.
disappears. um I mean, I use I use the techniques that I teach. No, but it's true. So, but very simply, we all will inevitably come up in our life against challenges that are like that. Whether, of course, you don't expect a global pandemic, but it's just in the inevitability of life for every single human being. You have a series of ups and downs, and some of those downs will be more impactful than others. And so, I think for me, um, I was just able to. I think the most important thing is to accept the situation, right? And it sounds so easy, as when you hear it, accept. What does that even mean? Well, it simply means that you don't create a whole series of thoughts and emotions in which you complain, disagree, see yourself as a victim, try to fight against this reality that is, what is.
Mm,
So it was undeniable. COVID was here, schools were closed. The research needed to happen that year because, as you know, when you're on a PhD, you have a timeline, and
mm,
that you have to stick to that timeline. So I I did what I mean. I used the skills that I already had for the business, and so I started to run Facebook ads, and the response was really good. So we got participants really fast because teachers were really stressed themselves, and they wanted whatever help they could get. And
mm,
so that happened very fast, and so we were able to recruit them in March. We started the program in April. And yeah, but I think it is about that ability to understand that your stress response, the physical stress response, is created in your brain, and your brain um, activates it completely outside of your awareness in terms of milliseconds. And it does so because of the way it interprets certain facts in your life, right? And this interpretation, part of it is based on cognitive patterns or thought patterns that are outside of your awareness, but some it is not. And so it's about becoming aware what is going on and accepting, we can put it simply, accepting that which you cannot change. And again, words are so simple and we think we know it on an intellectual level, but then you get to live it and you see if you actually have it internalized or not, right? If you actually, it causes you to lose sleep, it causes you to engage in behaviors that um, don't promote you being focused and having clarity and being efficient, but rather drain you further and make you stress further, right?
Mm. It's like that video, I think it was a couple of years ago, I've seen of an Indian guru or teacher, and it was kind of simple to the point that it was almost funny. He said, if there's, you have a problem, and if there is something you can do about it, then why worry? You go and do it. Then if you have a problem and there is nothing you can do about it, then why worry? There is nothing you can do. And it's just so simple, but yet, as you said, we have some patterns, I guess, or some underlying processes that are outside of our awareness, and that's when it becomes
Yeah.
difficult. Yeah. Okay, so Georgie, now I'm interested in really in that transition from your corporate job into
Mm-hmm.
business, and I know you shared this personal story of you experiencing a burnout, and thank you for normalizing it. And I had no idea that it only became a known thing and accepted by the United Nations as a occupational hazard. So yeah, thank you for this. But in terms of your mindset, what kind of shift did you have to go through from corporate stable job into business and PhD?
I think it's a leap of faith, right? It is.
Nice.
Ultimately, it's a leap of faith.
Mm.
And and for me, I just felt it within me that I needed to leave that country. I kept on seeing these planes with the New Zealand fern, those Air New Zealand planes, and it just felt like a sign that I had to go there. And it became very, I also kind of knew it was going to be the University of Auckland. I really only applied to one university, the University of Auckland, and I wrote that application, my proposal. It just came through me, it flew through me, you know. So at some point you have to, I think, stop and take stock. I say it starts with being honest with yourself. And for me, realizing that I was telling myself a lot of stories justifying why that job was good for me. I was clearly invested in getting a permanent residence in Australia. That had been a dream. I had lived in the country for 5.5 years. Um, and so I created a strong attachment around that identity, right? And so you tell yourself stories and you put up with behaviors that are not acceptable, and you put up with workload that is unacceptable. And the reality, at some point you have to stop and be honest with yourself, and just be honest with yourself about where you're at in terms also of your physical and mental health and what you're going to do about it. um and realize that just one story, one identity, one attachment is not who you are, that you can reinvent yourself in any circumstance. And whenever I talk to my clients, um, when they are in moments when they feel down, when they feel doubt, I ask them, isn't it true that something always came through in the past when you were down? Isn't it true? And they stop and they say yes. And it's the same for all of us. Something always comes through, right? And so the shift is that you start with uh, honesty towards yourself. You know, when you look in the mirror, and there's no need for the persona, no need for the mask can drop. And there's no need for blame either, or shame or guilt. It's just an honest taking in on, where am I not right now? Is this working? You know what is not working. So what next? And you will notice, I guess one thing that I want to say is that maybe for some people, their business appears from the beginning as something very clear,
Mm.
right? And you know, oh, I want to do this and this is how I want to do it. And I can put together the most perfect business plan and I'm going to follow it and I'm going to be successful. Um, Maybe for some that happens, but more often than not, when I talk to other entrepreneurs and business owners, it is a process, right? And so your business is going to become clear as you start working on it. And you will change because you get to know the market better, because you get to understand your clients better and what they need. So you will change your messaging. You might change the structure of your product. I mean, I'm talking in a service business. If you are creating, I don't have experience with creating a physical product.
Mm.
Um, but the idea is, yes, it's a leap of faith. And then as you experience, the first steps in your business is kind of like walking in a fog, right? So you see the road ahead of you, but very little of it.
Mm.
So you have these tentative steps. And of course, that uncertainty can create stress. And that uncertainty can make you think that you need to work crazy hours. And most business owners work long hours. A lot of them burn out.
And you think you don't need to work these crazy hours?
I think I think that you need to know your limit. And you need to be aware that if you don't recharge and you push yourself over the limit, you are going to burn out, and then you are no good to anyone or to your business.
I do.
It's as simple as that. Like,
yeah, I hear that a lot. A lot of business mentors say that in the first some time, so several months or a couple of years, you have to work, 80 hours a week. And that's what it takes. And I kind of usually question that. Is that really what it takes? And I don't have the answer.
I would be skeptical of anyone who tells you you need to work 80 hours a week, because that's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. It's like me telling you, charge your phone once a month and you use it the whole month. That just doesn't work, right? And your body and brain are the same. If you put too much cognitive load on your brain, you are going to start experiencing a lack of productivity, first and foremost. You're going to start experience fog, like lack of clarity in your thoughts. You start experiencing stress. You stop sleeping well at night. You stop getting the rest your brain needs. That brings up more cognitive distortion. So now you look at reality and you are seeing more and more stress triggers, and it is a downward spiral. And you use your capacity to be a leader for your team if you have a team, or you use your capacity to negotiate well, to present well, to deliver well.
Absolutely.
And I am actually very, not only skeptical, I think it is careless advice to give to people. And you see this, for example, when you have investors, right, talking about how they expect a founder to behave, right? If you are in a position to seek funds for your business, seed development, whatever funds you seek, talk to those people and understand what their expectations are and their approach is. Because I can tell you that if you work with someone who believes that you should die for this business, what good can come out of that? Because if you are burnt into the ground, if it affects your relationships and so you lose key people in your life, what's the point, right? I went actually to a presentation. I won't say the name of the particular fund I was there, but I remember this person saying, yeah, what I look for in a founder is someone who can work, I don't even remember how many hours a week, because that's what I did. And it cost me my marriage. But and I was thinking, so why are we creating already an unsustainable business from the get-go?
Wow.
Look around, the environment is in the shape it is as a result of unsustainable thinking. As the same with the human body, if you subject it to resource depletion, you will get nothing, because ultimately you are the golden egg. When you start your business, you are the you're actually the golden goose.
Golden goose,
and
yeah.
so if you get this golden goose to lay 10 eggs a day, you are going to kill it, right? And it seems to me it should be so straightforward, and it is not, right? Because people are taught that hard work is what gets you results. So let me just ask you, do you know someone in your life that works hard and they don't have the results? They don't have the success? Hard work is not the only thing.
Hmm. I think,
So, yeah.
yeah, it's kind of worn as a badge of honor, isn't it? Um, being, the perfectionism, the
Mm,
hard work, um, that sheer dedication and bloody-mindedness when you just, as you said, this person said, well, it costed me marriage, and it does sound like
mhm.
he's proud of the dedication.
Yes, he was proud. He was proud of that.
My goodness.
So I guess it comes back also to your values, right? Because there is a point where you have to be single-minded. Like with that, I agree. You've got to be dedicated and single-minded and to believe that you're going to make it. Yeah, for sure. Because there are days when you're low and when you doubt everything, and that voice in your head, that doubts things comes up. And yes, so you've got to have that belief. No, I'm going to make it. You also have to have the belief so strong that when you go into a negotiation and the answer is no, that doesn't destroy you. You just move on,
Yeah.
right? And so I'm not saying that hard work is not part of it, because I have worked hard for my business, that's for sure. I've worked sometimes at the weekend. I've worked long hours, but I know when I need to stop and rest. And I also take stock of what is important for me as a human being in this life. And I
Mm.
always remind myself, when people, for some people this might sound morbid, but for me it's not. Actually, it helps me stay in touch. But the reality is we all die. We are all alone when death comes, and we all die the same. And what I mean by that is that we don't take anything with us. You don't take that Ferrari, you don't take that multi-million dollar business, you don't take your loved ones. And so I encourage listeners to read a book by this is a palliative care nurse, Brownin. I don't remember, but the title of the book is called um, "The Regrets of the Dying" or something. The top 5 regrets of the dying.
Mm.
And so she works with people, end of life care.
Mhm.
And so she talked to them, and she put together a list of what are the top 5 things that people regret not doing. And let me tell you, it's not about work. And you would guess it, that it is about two main things. It is about having more meaningful relationships, and
Mm.
it is about living an authentic life.
Mm.
That one is a pretty big one. And not allowing society or what you think others think about you
Yeah.
dictate the way you live your life.
Mm.
And it's so easy, we say this, but when it comes to the lived experience,
Mm.
it's a different way of embodying it, right? Because sometimes in life, you have to make decisions that are quite significant. There's a lot of money at stake. And so that's where, you know, you might forget what is important, what is really important for you. And so I don't have an answer as to how much someone should work. It's a personal choice. But be clear that this choice will have consequences. Like everything in life, there's always a trade-off.
Sure.
So then take responsibility for those consequences. Because if for you, um, it's okay with you to lose a family, to lose the support of a loved one, then okay, then you're happy. Congratulations. But for me, it's not. Period. That's not how I want to experience my life. And ultimately, when you start a business, to be honest with you, why start a business if you're going to let someone else tell you how to live your life? Like honestly, the whole point of
Exactly.
starting a business is so you are your own boss, right? And so you live life on your own terms.
And it comes with its own challenges, right? So,
Oh, for sure.
yeah, being your own boss is one of the really big challenges out there. And yeah, thank you very much for sharing this. I really love the idea of going back to really understanding your core values and understanding, your vision pretty much, or just having that higher purpose. I've done the NLP course quite recently, and in there, one of the techniques we're looking at different levels of our life perceptions. I think that's the term, and the highest one is your vision or the purpose of life. And I came to this: the purpose of life for me at the moment is having an interesting and meaningful life, and it's exactly what you said as well. So just moving on to some of the business related challenges, perhaps around pricing. And I can only imagine how much work went into the research behind your product. So yeah, can you share a couple of other examples of that business mindset challenges? So as a first one is setting your price.
Yeah, that's a big one. And I think you will, as you start experimenting, you will learn what the right price point is for you. What I can suggest is you might be setting your prices too low. Most of the times is what I see happens, and that's certainly what happened to me as well. And so a good way to check is when you have your discovery call with the client, right? So you have a conversation, and so okay, ask them something. Okay, so what do you have a budget for this? That can give you an idea. Then is there, or another way of asking this, is there a certain budget you want me to stay within, right?
That's a nice way to put it.
Is there a, and that's just a very genuine question. Is there a certain budget you want me to stay within? And it gives you an idea of where they're at. And it also gives you an idea if it's worth spending your time doing that, because you need to understand your value. And that will come with time. When you first start, it is so common to just take whatever client comes your way. And it's not a bad thing. It's, you are learning, you're experimenting. And so, take it easy on yourself. Know that over time, you are going to refine your processes. You're going to refine your pricing strategy. You're going to become better at those discovery calls. It's all a work in progress. It's a constant learning, and mistakes are part of any learning journey. And so don't dwell on them. Like, it's okay. I find that a lot of business owners are very driven people. I myself, I can say I'm quite a driven person. And also perfectionists. You want to do good service, you want to do excellent service, and there is something good about that, because you get stuff done because it's high quality. And so look, in order to succeed, you've got to give a high quality product. But there is you need to assess what is your framework of reference for what is high quality, because for perfectionists, the framework of reference that they use in order to assess if something is high quality or good enough can have elements that are unrealistic. So then you need to check yourself, and particularly at the stage of, let's say, sending a proposal, right? Because you have a discovery call and you want to send out that proposal in the next 48 hours. And so how long are you going to agonize over designing a proposal that looks beautiful? How long are you going to agonize writing it down? What do I put in my proposal? What not? And so those are questions that you need to ask for yourself. And you will notice over time, you're going to develop a system for yourself, so that everything, has a framework, so that you have a look, your brand starts to have a look. But this is learn as you go, and don't worry about having it all from the beginning. It just comes with time, and so will pricing. But yeah, those questions are good. And you notice, like I noticed for me at the beginning, whenever I asked that question, they were always more than what I had thought,
Oh, that's interesting.
So yes. And so I was like, oh, okay. always more. And so and again, the more you meet, the more you understand also what is really the highest you could go with something. And yeah, you get to understand what type of client do you need in order to have your cash flow. Yeah, it's again, you learn by doing in a business, and don't worry about making mistakes. That's just part of the process.
This is wonderful. Georgi, you gave so many very useful, practical, and mindset tips. Thank you so much.